I might have to make an unexpected exit to greet my newest plumber friend.
Oh, cool. All right.
So,
All
yeah.
right, we're going to get rolling. Hello, everyone. Today is December 22nd. This is a bi-weekly meeting of the SIG Architecture Enhancement Subproject. This is a meeting that will be recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. First off, hello, welcome, hi, good to see your faces. This is our last meeting for the year. So I figured what we would do, we have a light agenda and a lot of the things we have discussed already. I figure what we do is just make sure that we're all in line for moving into the new year. Talking about priorities really quickly and checking me if I forgot anything on the list. Um, so first off, let's do a round of introductions. Do we have anyone new on the call that wants to say hi?
Yeah, hi, I am new to the call. I joined this as part of the release shadow as well, so I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. On my day job, I work in VMware, and I am part of, yeah, I think Stephen also works in VMware, correct? Yeah, I am part
And
of,
Lori, yep.
and oh, okay. I am part of the VCD group in the extensibility team. So trying to figure.
Cool, welcome. Anything that you're interested in particular as we go through this?
I mean, no, nothing in particular. I'm just looking forward to what the team does and how you actually vet new KEPs and how it goes through the whole process, and also
Awesome,
understand about that. Yeah.
awesome. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
All right, so Bob, I know you have to drop early. Are there specific things that you want to cover?
I think I am actually pretty good.
Sweet, sweet. If there is anyone else who wants to drop early and you want to cover something, let us know now before we jump into this. All right, well, away we go. I think that a lot of us are kind of in line with much of what's already written down, so we can probably also make this a short meeting if that's cool with everyone. Like short meetings are awesome. Okay, so first up on the list is receipts. So the receipts process, we've talked about this a little bit. Essentially, receipts for new folks on the call. The idea is that receipt is essentially we're trying to invert the flow of information, right? Where usually an enhancements subteam member will gather feedback from the variety of SIGs to understand what is going into the release, right? By kind of using the receipts process, the plan is to essentially have SIGs instead soft commit to what they plan to land for the release, right? This would go into some metadata, and then we would use that as a means to essentially generate a roadmap for the release. So getting an idea of what is proposed, what is accepted, what is at risk for any reason, as well as being able to apply pre-submits and some automation on top of this. So I think from our last meeting, what we had talked about was planning to do some of this work for 121. Initially, we wanted to enforce this for 121, but I think now we're saying that we want to do some of this work, shore up the CAP metadata, and then land this in earnest for 122. Is that still accurate, everyone?
Yep.
Okay, nods from Bob, nods from Nabarun, and Lori.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, party away. All right. So we will as we go into the holidays, the folks who are thinking about, who are working on receipts, so Jeremy, Nabarun, I know that Jeremy is out today, but Nabarun, I believe you have a provisional CAP for receipts, or in addition to a current CAP, maybe?
Yes, so we do have a provisional cap. I think it's 2170. I'm not accurate on that number, but there's
Okay.
a cap PR open. There's just one teeny bit missing on that cap. The provisional cap is the implementation detail.
Okay, would you mind linking that into the meeting notes when you get a chance?
Sure, I'll do that right after.
Is the
Yes.
process just to complete that part and then merge the pull request, and then it just is a cap that hangs around until it's done?
Generally, yes. So I think what we should do is, this will be a little later, but CAP metadata versioning plus CAP types, maybe we want to talk about as well. So yeah, the idea is that you would land a provisional CAP. Provisional CAP essentially says from the SIG that are the owning area that, yes, this idea is sound, we should totally do it. If people are willing to commit to the work, then it should get done. It essentially just solidifies the idea, right? As a CAP moves into implementable, there's a higher expectation of the details that would be involved, actual implementation details, the chats that you've had, hopefully backfilling some of the implementation history, so on and so forth, before actual implementation. But we're pretty deep into this already, I think, from a thought standpoint, at least. So I think we should be good to roll.
Mhm.
Sound good, Lori?
It does.
All right, all right. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns on the timeline or the idea of receipts? Okay. All right, so next up is refining the documentation on process, as well as publicizing some of what we do, or republicizing some of what we do. This is kind of takeaway from the chat that we had last week Monday. Was it last week Monday?
It is Thursday, actually.
Thursday. Wow.
I know.
Together.
I know.
No. Sorry, not the
Oh.
not the 120 retro, but the chat that we had in the smaller group.
I thought it was Thursday.
On Thursday.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore. All right, so Thursday. So Thursday, a few of us got together. Lori, Sushmita, Aiden, myself, Jeremy. Am I missing anyone? Kirsten. How can I forget Kirsten? So we kind of did like a brief, I guess a retro kind of the 120 release a little bit. Some of the interpersonal things that were run into as people were collecting caps. Some of the feedback from the team. The broad feedback is that it seems that newer folks who have the opportunity to participate in the process, or maybe this is their first time going through the process, are very likely to follow the rules as they're laid out. And older contributors, or more senior contributors, have what was noticed is that there is a bit of leeway given for the more senior contributors, or misunderstandings in the process. So this note here is kind of, let's say what we need people to do, and hope that we can make that clear moving into 121 and 122. So one of the ideas that was tossed out in that meeting was that we do a blog post. That gathers some testimonials from SIG's subproject owners, component leads who have had a good time doing KEPs and want to provide some feedback there. But we also want to make sure that while we're doing that, we gather the bad feedback too, right? Or the feedback that is actionable for improvements. So we want to do a little bit of both of those. And Kirsten volunteered to run with that. I'll be helping her out in terms of like just figuring out who needs to be in the room to provide feedback and whatnot, and if there needs to be any SIG leady, cat herdy-ness happening, I'll help out with that. Any questions? Anyone interested in also working on that?
I was going to get into the parts of the different personas, just basically the long time awareness of responsiveness differences. Some SIGs are quite responsive, some SIGs are not. In any case, enhancements team often runs into the issue of trying to get answers from SIGs that they are trying to help, trying to push enhancements across the finish line. And sometimes this requires more effort than maybe it should. And so, we would like to see if we can improve the entire experience overall by starting with SIGs who are fully on board with being responsive and just getting responses in a reasonable amount of time, and then working with some SIGs who may be on the fence around that, and then some SIGs who seem to have struggles to provide responses to the enhancements team in a timely manner. And so just try to figure out what is happening with the latter two groups, and then keep working with the former group, the ones that are fully on board, to really try to understand why, what are they doing that enables them to provide quick turnaround for responses, and also is it an attitude, or is it a workload issue? These kinds of questions. So I am to create kind of a one-page plan around this. I guess I'll do that tomorrow. And then I'll share that in the channel. And then we'll go from there. So a lot of the data I've been collecting over the months is in a spreadsheet. And I think I shared a Miro board because, me and Miro boards. But I shared a Miro board in the chat just now, which gives you some ideas about notes that we took in this chat. And then there's a spreadsheet with data about how SIGs are running their processes at the moment. So, with an eye toward what are they doing that's from a process perspective likely to help them turn work around faster, turn responses around faster. What are they actually doing about their workload and processing that? So.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm excited. We've got lots of cool things coming, and I think that part of it is making sure that everyone is on the same train as we do it. I think, Aiden had mentioned something around kind of the network effect during the meeting, which essentially is, for the folks who weren't there, those groups that Lori was talking about, the folks who are incredibly responsive, follow the process to the letter, the folks who are maybe having a time, and then the folks that are less responsive, the ones that we kind of have to chase. If we are able to get the folks who are following the process to the letter and kind of get an idea of what their process is while following the process, that one, we've got, that's kind of building champions across the community, right? And the more champions you have, the more likely something is to succeed. So excited to see that crop up for the new year. Any questions, comments, concerns there?
Yeah, Bob's saying, I think for many you'll find they're doing anything there. Yeah, a lot of them are, but maybe not enough, or maybe not consistently.
I
So
see.
maybe they're triaging, but maybe not consistently.
Some of the problem childs are just, I know, don't really do any sort of like overall feature planning or anything like that for the cycle, or have an idea of what keps are actually, an overall idea of what keps are in flight. But
Yep.
that's,
So-
yeah,
So
that's
I've collected detailed information about all of that about 2 months ago, and it's true. One of the interesting dynamics here is when they don't want to change.
Yeah.
And they have the issue and they'll tell you, we have too much work. Okay, would you like some help? No.
So, so we're going to try to attack that a little bit for the new year. I think, Ray, if you don't mind noting that we want to make sure that we're in terms of, while publicizing this stuff, making clear that people know about all of the different KEP statuses. I feel like people don't currently. And there are two statuses that fit pretty well for deferring work or rejecting work, and they are the deferred and rejected statuses that I don't think I've ever seen anyone use for a KEP. And those, the idea there is that the KEPs are meant to be, the GitHub is essentially our living body of work for the community, right? And KEPs are meant to capture the essence of all the big changes that we do, right? Whether it be in KK, whether it be elsewhere. And when you capture changes, you need to capture the ones that or when you capture thoughts, right, you should be capturing the ones that we think are good ideas and the ones that we maybe don't want to do yet, or maybe don't want to do at all, right? Because history repeats itself, and you will see these ideas crop up again, and someone will dig up a discussion about when, why, how this happened, or why it didn't happen, and the KEP should be that discussion, really. Right, the KEP should solidify, this is an idea. Maybe, maybe we also want to consider adding sections in KEPs for the rejection reason, right, or the deferral reason, right? If it's too much work, I think it's fine to say that up front, right? Or the SIG doesn't have bandwidth, the component or sub-project area doesn't have bandwidth, right? Being able to say that stuff up front gives us something to look back on, right? All right. Any comments before we move to the next one? All right, cool. So as we kind of, I think quickly is a word, maybe. Quickly is a word, I think compared to the history of the features and enhancements process. We've been quickly iterating over the KEP metadata, right? Lots of people are starting to have ideas about what is and isn't useful, what would be helpful for them to track over time. And we've recently made few changes to the structs, right, in the metadata. So we've added things like expanded on the milestone struct, right, which includes the target stages and the releases that that a enhancement would hit a certain stage. As we continue to do that stuff, it probably makes sense that we start versioning KEPs. Versioning the KEP metadata specifically, right? So in this process, we're not too concerned about the content of the KEP itself, but more so the validity of the metadata, right? As we start to build more and more tools around the metadata, we need to make sure that the metadata is sound. And if someone wants to propose a change, we need some guidance on that process, or we need to provide guidance for that process, right? The same way we would the same way there would be an API review process if it was a large enhancement for Kubernetes. Kubernetes, I think is some of the structure that we need to bring into maintaining the KEP metadata. So Bob in the chat is mentioning the Open API v3 schema for versioning.
Essentially, we do it for CRDs already. It's something that a lot of people are familiar with. If we built a version number, then you basically use that to spec out how you want a YAML file, and there you go.
Boom. Oh. Yeah, I'm with consistent, well-known, easy to consume for everyone involved. So I'm happy to go with Open API if that makes sense for people. Not something we have to sort out now, just something that we do need to focus on, especially as we're going through this like next iteration of, or this first change from like, let's clean up the old KEP metadata and get the file formats right and everything in the right place, to we actually have a schema now, right? And how do we follow it? How do we validate against it? So part of those changes, right? So one kind of process around doing the metadata versioning, but also I think something that's come up a few times is my thing. We have something on the front of the repo that says like, is my thing an enhancement, right? And it kind of gives you these like rough heuristics of what it means to be an enhancement, right? I think that that section has kind of existed for probably as long as I have been doing this, and we could probably refine it at this point. And I think that we've seen KEPs used for a variety of things. We've seen KEPs used strictly for enhancements landing in Kubernetes, but we also have a class of KEP that are KEPs that are landing for out of tree enhancements. And then we also have KEPs that are kind of like process related KEPs, right? And they're kind of a, I guess they would be a subset of maybe the out of tree style of KEP, right? But essentially, it's a big change. It's going to affect a lot of things, right? So something like issue triage is a good example, right? Or the receipts process, right? That's going to be another big change that isn't landing code in Kubernetes, but will affect how code is landed for Kubernetes, right? And then you've got like 617, right? 617 is the Metacap, the KEP for enhancing the KEP process, right? And that's another, policy-based KEP or process-based KEP that doesn't, later Bob, that doesn't quite fit nicely into the box of like things landing in Kubernetes. I think by delineating some types for KEPs, it'll allow one, maybe some different styles of writing a KEP, some slightly different styles of writing a KEP, but two, it'll also allow the release team to have very clear boundaries about when something is out of tree or how something should be handled if it is out of tree, right? And that has been something that's come up for multiple cycles now, and we tweak and we tweak, and I think we have enough data now to kind of write something concrete. So, so the proposal there is to add a type, and this would go into the next version of whatever that next version is, whether we're calling them V something, beta 1, yada, 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 right? Questions on that?
I guess just when are we doing this and what would the types be? Because I could think of process, policy, and then KEPs.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
for
so
features.
yeah, so
development.
I was just thinking there's actually maybe another one, right? So if you look at like the kates.gcr.io vanity domain flip, if you look at something like changes to policies around artifact management, those would all fall into, I think those kind of fall into like an infrastructure change, right? Which is kind of separate from a code change and kind of needs to be tracked differently from a code change, right? So baseline, I would see in-tree, out of tree, process, and infra, just as a vague types.
What do we
And
have? Oh, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was just gonna say, what do we have to do to roll this out?
So this kind of folds into the versioning system. So one, we
Okay.
want to figure out a versioning system and make some rules around it, and then we would want to, we could do it 2 ways. We could add these types first and then backfill a versioning system, or we could do the versioning system first. I think us thinking about it can run in parallel, right?
I guess if it's like applying a label for some categorization, that doesn't seem like such a big deal. Just to understand how many of each item we have in these buckets.
Yeah.
And try to understand how they're dealt with. If they are dealt with, some of them may just be lingering, like the one I posted in the agenda, which, I mean, come on, it's fine. But like, I think Aaron posted that a while ago. If it was this year.
Which one is this? Oh,
Oh, it was Jeremy actually
feature
in May.
versus policy thing.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it's just been around.
Yes.
But like nobody's talking about it, you know. I mean, we kind of are now.
Yeah.
But
I think
it seems to be the crux of the question in part.
Yeah, I think we think about it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We don't say it out loud too often. But it's, I mean, honestly, there are so many issues like this. There's one that's there's one that Maria opened in SIG release. There is this one from Jeremy. There, I believe, was one from Aaron in either
Yes,
K
that's what I was
community
thinking.
or
Yeah.
in K enhancements. This is something that I believe Josh Burkus has also left feedback on, either in the feedback gathering issue or on Aaron's. It's something that we know exists, and I think that up until now we didn't have enough people, or it wasn't high enough on the priority list to solve. But ideally, you know, in an ideal world, everyone uses KEPs. KEPs are frictionless, and we have some work to get to that point. But I think that this is part of it. So,
I mean, I wonder if there's anything that maybe not a brand new contributor, but a fairly been around for a few months contributor could do to just pick up some of the workload, whether it's maybe what we need to do is put all of these kind of policy and process related questions into a single doc, like say, here's how these things relate to each other.
Yeah.
Together they form a plan or a collection of thoughts, and then match that to this idea of versioning, and then figure out what are the decisions that have to be made, who makes those, and then how do we make it come to be, you know?
This is a, Lori, I think this is a Miro board.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm
like,
thinking
it's a flow chart, right? I think
yeah.
probably what we want is is all the leads we get together and throw our best guess at the flow out. And
the leads?
Yeah.
Like the chairs on leads meeting, this is where you would,
no, I
other
mean,
leads?
I mean the enhancement subproject owners.
Oh, okay.
Right. We get together, we do our best guess of like, well, I think this goes here, I think this goes here, this is what the general flow is. And then we kick that out and say, like, is this what you thought it was, ladies and gentlemen? And work from, yeah, and work from there. I think that at the point that we provide some sort of skeleton, we could hand it off to someone who is fresher to all of this.
Cool. Yeah, all right, so I'm putting this in as, that's something else to kind of spin up. I put it in the existing Miro board.
Awesome.
They should give us money. We say, you know, we're like totally promoting by Miro. Kubernetes brought to you by Miro.
Right. And now a word from our sponsors.
Exactly. Tired of frustrating piles of GitHub issues? Turn those into beautiful diagrams.
I love it. Yes. Sorry. What's up?
I was just joking. We should just cut out this portion of the meeting and send it to them.
Like, here's the pitch. Here's the pitch.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's great. I think it's definitely again, I think we finally have the people to do some of these things.
We also have some new people that joined since the meeting began. I don't know if we want to take a break and say hi.
Yeah, we can totally do that.
Cool.
If anyone is new to the call and wants to say hi, feel free to unmute and go for it.
Hello, guys. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. By the way, my name is Mohammed Sheo, and currently I'm living here in Germany. So I just want to go through all this CIGs and see where can I maybe start contributing. And do I have a background in Java for more than almost like 10 years? And now I have started working in some Go in our company currently here. Though I don't want to mention the name of the company, but it's just a side project. Yes, I just want to start contributing.
Where in Germany?
Currently in Hof, it's close to Bayreuth.
To Bayreuth?
Yeah, Bayreuth. You know Nürnberg?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm in Berlin.
Yes, okay. So this is where I live, and I live with my family. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So that's just it from my side.
Awesome.
Herzlich willkommen.
Yes,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you.
And the other person just dropped, so I guess they did not. Oh.
All right. Yeah, it looks they were on and off, so they might have been having internet issues.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next one up, and this is yet another thing that kind of dovetails together, right? So, so this one is the metadata cleanup, right? So as we have kind of evolved, what is now the enhancements process, what was previously the features collection process, we have moved documents a few places. So initially feature proposals were in Kubernetes community repo. They've since been moved to K features, which became K enhancements. So the repo that you know today has gone through a few different iterations. As we were migrating those proposals, we've essentially got a few different caps, right? A few different types of caps. We have ones that were formerly feature proposals and were converted into caps. We've got ones that were created around the time that we were just starting the cap process, and the naming situation was different. Essentially, we had the idea is that you would reserve a cap number, right? And the cap number would be in the top level of the cap subdirectory. And as we kind of iterated through cap numbers, if you were writing a cap, you would have to go and make sure that you were choosing a unique cap number, and then update that cap number to the next monotonic increasing number, right? So as you can imagine, that led to lots of PR collisions. We already know that landing these proposals are kind of a hassle, I think is a way to put it, definitely in the earlier days. So adding that cap number into the mix caused a lot of merge conflicts and made not a lot of people happy. So we decided to get rid of the cap number and moved to a date. yeah, we move to a date next, right? So so you'll see some keps will have a number 000 number, right? And then we moved to dates. The date would be the date that the kep was initially PR'd, or that you started drafting it. And then that kind of works out okay, but it doesn't really tie you back to the GitHub issue unless you go digging, right? So the next iteration, and it's the current iteration, was create a GitHub issue in Kubernetes enhancements. Once you create the issue will have a number, and then you use the issue's number as the kep number, right? So your kep would be, kep 1337, super cool kep.md, right? So we were doing that for a while, and then we did one more iteration, and that was to move from the from having keps and their metadata in one file. So kep number dash kep name dot md. The top of that file, the front matter of that file, would be YAML describing the kep status, type, stage, name, approvers, reviewers, so on and so forth. So since then, we've converted from a single markdown file into a directory. So now the directory is named kep number or issue number dash kep name, right? Within that directory is the a readme dash a readme.md, which is the actual kep content, and then a kep.yaml, which is the metadata for the kep. By doing this, we have a pretty clear indication of where all the keps are supposed to be located. We can do some things like finding keps based on how folders are named. It becomes a lot easier to strip out the metadata of an individual kep, because it is essentially just reading the bytes in from one file, right? Instead of reading through Markdown and searching for the YAML and then kind of keying in on that stuff. So what this means across these kind of like 4 or 5 different iterations is that a bunch of different keps are in different states, right? So you've got some of the older ones, you've got some of the newer ones that are in the correct state, and some SIGs working towards converting keps from one type to another, right? So what we want to do is make sure that every kep looks the same, right? So it's going to take some metadata cleanup, and you'll see in the next item we talk about the pre-submit validation. So the pre-submit validation will get stricter as we start to do things like have versioning, right? We can start to, there is a PR that Jeremy Morris opened that kind of raises a question. And the question is around, well, what happens when a field changes? What happens when anything changes in the metadata, right? We don't have a good answer today. And the approach that was taken in this instance was to kind of search and replace, right? Search and replace the participating SIGs field, replace that with participating groups, right? Because keps can be issued by multiple groups. I'm popping that issue, that pull request in the Zoom chat. Ray, if you don't mind grabbing that. So yeah, I'll show this really quickly. And right. So with this issue, or with this PR, you can see that in the template, kep.yaml, we basically added open questions. This was changed since the last time I saw it, but okay. All right, so we'll get back to this. But what was happening was kind of a search and replace, and the changes were across all of the caps. So this was like files changed like 270 or something. So what I'd like to see is kind of a conversion tool, right? As we kind of actually define versions for kept metadata, we should be able to convert old keps to new file formats and new metadata. And for that to happen, we need to write some conversion tools, basically, is the long and the short of it. So as we talk about versioning, as we talk about stricter validation, we should also think about how do we, again, kind of defray some of that burden from the KEP authors and reviewers. So when you submit a KEP and it actually gets merged, you shouldn't have to do anything else if we change versions, right? We should be able to handle that with a tool. So that's kind of what this is about. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so we're going to think about that as we start to think about the versioning bits. Next up is process enforcement. And in parentheses, I have carrot versus stick, right? So today in Kubernetes, there's really nothing stopping anyone from landing code, right? If the code is approved, by a code owner, a SIG component subproject owner, reviewer, approvers, if that code merges, we have that's it. It's done, right? So the enhancement has essentially landed, and it may be in a partial state. It may not be. It may be something that the release team did not officially approve, or that the SIG did not officially approve. It may be something that we wanted to defer. Maybe something that has not completely landed and will not land in time for the release, right? So this is kind of, this item is kind of talking about how we should go about thinking through enforcement. If a KEP is submitted and a KEP merges, like that's when code should land. However, there are kind of gray areas where contributors who are newer, changes that are smaller than the enhancement size, changes that can happen over the course of one release cycle, which we call features. That is a bit of a gray area, right? What happens when a feature lands and someone builds on top of that feature? What happens when we need to revert that? Do we revert multiple features to get this done? Do we revert an entire enhancement? Do we downgrade an API? Can we do that? Like, what are the rules? So I think, part of this is getting a little clearer about what can and can't be done, and thinking about what the kind of stick or the enforcement piece of this is, right? Because the offer for KEPs is essentially like to get on the release train, right? To be in the release notes, to have potentially a section of the release blog written about your enhancement, so on and so forth, right? The expectation is that you do all of these things on time within the scope of a release cycle, so that the release team doesn't have to go chasing people. And the release team currently does quite a bit of chasing people. So this conversation is kind of happening in multiple groups. It's happening here. It's happening in SIG release, across the release team, across release engineering, and it's also happening in working group reliability. So one of the ideas currently is improving the merge blocking plugin. The merge blocking plugin allows you to block merges, but it is kind of an all or nothing feature right now, right? So if you open up a merge blocking issue, the merge blocking issue will block merges across all branches for Kubernetes, right? Where in this case, we kind of only want it to block for the current release cycle, right? So the merge blocking plugin needs some granularity in what it can do. The way that merge blocks happen today is you open an issue and you tag it with the merge blocker label. Anyone can close merge blocker issues. Anyone should be able to close issues in general. I think anyone can issue the /close command, or maybe org owners. I'd have to look into that. Suffice it to say, there are plenty of people who can close a merge block issue and kind of undo that enforcement mechanism. So the merge blocker plugin also needs to support specific groups of people being able to block merges for specific release branches, right? So more to discuss there. I think more of that conversation will happen in SIG release, as well as working group reliability. Working group reliability has a proposal out for increasing the reliability bar of releases. And I think that the merge blocking plugin will be a key component of some of that as they move from investigation into enforcement. It's early days for them right now, so no action required as we move into the new year, but definitely in 121, we need to be thinking about it.
I have a question.
Yep.
So is there a requirement that every CAP needs to have a feature flag or something like that? No. Okay.
So this kind of goes back to the conversation about CAP types, right? So some features. So the way we define enhancements versus features is like a feature is a unit of work that can land within the scope of one cycle, right? An enhancement is a set of features that need to be executed on across multiple cycles, right? So think, say, like epic versus story, right? So depending on what it is, and again, there's some gray area there too, depending on what it is, may determine how it lands, right? So yes, we haven't quite figured it all out, and depending on the scope of the feature, like there may be different requirements. If it's a feature, land it, have tests, right? Get a good release note. If it's an enhancement, it's a set of features which may require feature gate and rollout across multiple release cycles. If it's something that doesn't necessarily touch the API, it still may require rollout across multiple release cycles, but doesn't necessarily require a feature gate because it's not an API change, right? So the answer is it depends. But having some clarity around and being a little bit more granular about the requirements as we move through those different types would be something that we'd want to get out of this too.
Another quick follow-up question. Are there are there merge gates such as code coverage and other things which are enforced?
So we have, as far as I know, there is no code coverage enforcement on Kubernetes. I think it's something that we would want eventually, but I don't know where that discussion is currently. I would say that this lands, that's kind of the cross section of SIG architecture and SIG testing, who kind of have the pen on making that decision.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. The feature gate mention is a good, something I did not mention in the previous topic around metadata versioning, but kept metadata versioning. One of the things that was suggested by Hippie Hacker was a field for the name of the feature gate, right? So we can see a kept, we can see an enhancement as it's kind of evolving over time. Right now, the conformance group has no way of telling what is landing when until kind of later in the process when they're coming back to kind of check on how far along we are with conformance tests for specific gates. So getting them in earlier in the process, I think one way to do that is adding that field, right? And that allows us to kind of track an API change over time too, right? So that's something that we're going to discuss in 121 as well. Okay, and the last two are one, shopping around the idea of office hours and project management help for various SIGs. This kind of rolls back into the discussion earlier about the good, the not so good, and the we got to fix this categories for enhancement owners. So as we kind of get a better idea of who fits into what bucket, Lori has a ton of research on this already, as well as the folks who have been on the release team in the past. The idea is that some of the newer contributors who have who have product management experience can work with SIGs to start thinking through what that SIG's roadmap looks like, what they're trying to execute on for a cycle for a year, right? I think that we are sorely lacking in that experience across the community, and it is a huge opportunity for new contributors with that experience to get involved.
Yeah, like I'm just actually sorry for the noise. That's a plumber. But basically, I'm just getting pinged right now from someone on this topic. I'm like, please join the enhancements meetings because, hey, then it scales and it's becoming a group effort instead of folks in isolation. I think, yeah, perhaps we need some. I'll draft this plan and we'll meet and discuss it. And but I think that maybe there's a visibility issue, like people not really recognizing that if they're sitting there wondering why certain SIGs are not moving cups along, you know, there's a group where we can discuss it, try to take actions.
I think there's also there's a kind of set of concentric circles, right, of people who really you know, kind of I would say probably in the center of this is the enhancement sub project owners, people who deeply understand this process and had hands in creating it. Then kind of moving outward, you've got the enhancement sub team of the release team, and then the wider release team with their understanding of the enhancements process. And then a little further out, you've got the enhancement owners, right? So the people who are actually enhancement owners, reviewers, and approvers, right? So you've got the people who are actually executing on delivering enhancements, who should know how the process functions, right? And then further out, you've got you start to move kind of outside of the community, right? And I think that as we hit that circle, it's a little hard to understand what's happening internally, right? So I think that thinking through how we can better, again, publicize the work that we do and how to get involved with the process. I think one is good for the overall health of the process and the community, but also gives a huge opportunity for people with the product management experience and the program management experience to get more deeply involved across SIGs.
I mean, they're asking me just now if this is a project of SIG release. I'm like, no. So, I mean, this is someone who's quite knowledgeable. So this just is a little indicator. As we head off into the holidays, ponder, what would 2021 enhancements look like? We might, you know, we could have greater visibility and engagement.
Yeah.
Folks probably just aren't thinking about it.
Yeah, I think, you know, when it works really well, you know, the sufficient, well, I forgot what the phrase is, but like you know, sufficiently complex, something yada yada, indistinguishable from magic, blah, something. It was a good quote and I ruined it. But essentially, like,
Yeah.
when we're doing our job really well, this shouldn't exist. That we you know, it's
Yeah, we've made such progress this year. I mean, these meetings weren't even happening. And then when they were, it was the same
same
3 or 4
queue.
people
Yeah.
who were overstretched. So the fact that all of you who are new are here is great. Like, please be part of the solution. We need your ideas. We need more contributors here. Just use the channel. It might be a little awkward as we try to onboard you and find something for you to do, but there's a commitment here. So just hang in there with us, and for sure, like we're starting to provide that to the new folks that join. So you can be the next, because we definitely need more people here with new ideas, more ideas helping. It's just too much effort for overstretched people, the overstretched sub-project owners, which includes me. I'm not that overstretched, but this will be a high priority for me in 121, but everyone else is juggling a lot of responsibilities. So we need more folks for sure. So
Yeah, and I echoing that, I would say that, like, be vocal, be very
Yeah.
vocal. Don't something I tell the release team, don't assume that anything that's written down is correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is an opportunity for improvement. Carrying this for a few years, I do not have I do not have product or program management experience, or have ever had that title as a job title. I'm just reasonably organized in at certain moments. So, you know, what I would love to see is more people who do have that expertise coming in to this sub project to guide it. So yeah, to wrap, there are 2 more items that I just stuck on the back of the agenda, 3 actually. The website will come together when all of the metadata comes together. I know that people are starting to pick the website idea back up, so we should hope to see something bare bones pop up towards the end of 121 or beginning of 122. We need to backfill some of these meeting recordings. I'm not sure who all has the access to do so. Lori, it's possible that you don't have access to do some of these things. So we'll work that out in the new year. I think we also have to make sure this meeting has a password on it, and make sure everyone has access to, like, the YouTube playlist to do that, and host keys and all that good stuff. And then the other housekeeping item is that we've got a few comments from folks that were not able to attend these meetings across the year, that the meetings are at, the meeting may be at a inconvenient time. So going into the new year, we'll also be issuing a doodle to get some ideas on new meeting times, make sure it is more inclusive for people who want to get involved. And with that, are there any parting thoughts as we go into the end of the year?
Happy holidays to all.
Yep.
Happy holidays. Happy holidays. Thank you all. Thank you to all of our new attendees. Thank you to all of the folks who are on the release team who have been making this better and better across every quarter. Yeah, thank you. Let's crush it in 2021. Have a good rest of the year, everyone. Take it easy.
All right, see.
All right. See
Okay,
you.
bye.